afternoon, early evening, and then tonight, winter returns. You're definitely going to feel that chill tomorrow morning, low to mid-30s, even some 20s over the suburbs.
I am again thankful to all news media outlets for letting me use their contents. I greatly appreciate that. I am available 24/7 if they need any assistance. Now go to the headlines. Hi and very warm welcome at Amir Shackle 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Following news headlines have been reported by world major English news channels and news agencies. So please watch it.
Good evening. Today marks the beginning of a new era for the global economy. President Donald Trump's reliance on tariffs to bring wealth into the United States and manufacturing jobs to the American people kicked in this morning, with 10% baseline levies on just about every import coming into the U.S. Far steeper tariffs on trading partners like China, Vietnam, India, and the European Union are set to begin next week. The market's reaction? Clear and jarring. The S&P 500 plunging 10% in 2 days. Major banks like JP Morgan now forecasting a recession this year, even as the president today posted encouragement, saying this is an economic revolution. We begin tonight. Senior business correspondent Christine Romans.
At ports across America tonight, a new reality for the more than $3 trillion worth of goods imported into the country each year. President Trump's baseline tariff of 10% for nearly all U.S. trading partners now in effect. Far higher tariffs, like 46% on Vietnam, 26% on India, and 20% on the European Union, are set to begin on Wednesday. The president's senior counselor for trade and manufacturing today insisting
we're going to have a bullish boom, and the Dow's going to hit 50,000 during Trump's term.
But U.S. markets this week had a decidedly different interpretation. The Dow plunging nearly 4,000 points since President Trump's Rose Garden announcement Wednesday.
It's our declaration of economic independence.
The market sell-off triggered Thursday, deepening Friday, after China announced it would match the new U.S. tariffs on its goods with 34% tariffs of its own on imports from the U.S. Warning signs of a recession now flashing. JP Morgan forecasting a downturn in U.S. GDP for the year that will increase U.S. unemployment to 5.3%. And Fed Chair Jerome Powell warning of rising prices to come.
Tariff increases will be significantly larger than expected. And the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth.
President Trump today, golfing in Florida, acknowledging the economic disruption his policies are causing, posting, "Hang tough. It won't be easy, but the end result will be historic." His administration now making big promises.
Wages are going to go up, profits are going to go up, and life's going to be beautiful here in America. Trust in Trump.
Christine, the president has said his policies will not change, but he has also indicated that he is open to discussion.
Yeah, Jose, he said he's in talks with Vietnam about a possible deal, and there could be relief for China if there's a sale of TikTok. And just today, the White House confirmed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he will be in D.C. on Monday, in part, to talk about tariffs. Jose?
For the first time ever, you can make your photos talk, sing, and dance with flawless hand and body movements.
On this Saturday night, the world reacts to a new economic reality as Trump tariffs spread.
Hands off Greenland! That's an independent country! Hands off Canada!
So do protests on the streets and from international manufacturers. Plus, the new documents that show the original U.S. tariffs had little to do with border security.
He really didn't have much interest in knowing what's going on.
Campaign trail promises, the liberals on trades, the conservatives on red tape, and the NDP on the doctor shortage. And
So much good! This week, Christine, get ahead!
one goal away from bringing down the Great Ones record.
Global National reporting tonight.
Colleen Christie.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Donald Trump's trade war has officially gone global with a 10% tariff taking effect on all imports from many countries. With heftier levies set to take effect next week, much of the world is now catching up to what's been the reality for Canada since last month. So-called hands-off protests have taken place in major cities across the U.S., Canada, and the world today. A coordinated show of defiance against Donald Trump's latest actions. The U.S. president is urging Americans to hang tough, insisting he'll deliver historic results with his tariff plan. Candace Cole has tonight's top story.
In Washington, D.C.,
So we say to Donald Trump and Elon Musk, hands off Greenland. That's an independent country. Hands off Canada. That's an independent country.
and around the world, people have gathered by the masses to decry the actions of President Donald Trump and his advisor, tech billionaire Elon Musk. From Portugal,
freedom is at stake in the United States and for the whole world with what Donald Trump is doing.
To Paris.
He's upending economies of some of the poorest countries in the world on a whim. What do you say?
Everybody else, even penguins, were affected by the tariffs.
As Americans also grapple with the dismantling of government agencies with hundreds of thousands of federal job cuts.
Haven't seen a plan.
Meantime, hundreds of people protesting President Trump's policies in front of the Minnesota State Capitol in St. Paul today. It's one of hundreds of so-called hands-off rallies scheduled across the country and around the world. Madeline Rivera, live at the National Mall in D.C. with the very latest on what's happening in the nation's capital. Hello, Maddie.
Hi, good afternoon, Kevin. Well, event organizers had hoped that this would be the largest single-day protest against the Trump administration since President Trump retook office in January, and I can tell you there are thousands of people here from across the country. I want to show you a little bit of the crowd right now. You can see right here, my photographer, Dartise, pans on over here to see a little bit of the crowd. You can see people here walking out. They're carrying their signs, things that say resist. They're carrying their flags. The crowd has remained peaceful, but man, these people are fired up. They are angry, and they've been very vocal about their frustrations. They're accusing President Trump and Elon Musk of a billionaire takeover. They're accusing them of shutting down America for parts, shutting down Social Security offices, firing federal workers, all they say to benefit the billionaire class. There are several groups here, civil rights groups, labor unions, climate organizations. Democratic members of Congress also spoke today, and they are hoping to take on a sharper message that they hope will be effective and resonate with voters as they try to come up with a strategy, an effective strategy to counter the Trump administration. Here's Congressman Jamie Raskin.
Vance and Musk, they may have access to artificial intelligence, but they've got no access to human intelligence. These founders of the Dark Enlightenment, as they call themselves, are no match for the founders of the actual Enlightenment.
And you know, Kevin, these protests are happening across the country, but I spoke to one attendee who said she traveled from Boston to be here in D.C. so that she can deliver a message directly to the Trump administration. She thought that that would be more effective, but I have to say, Kevin, President Trump is not here, of course. He's in Mar-a-Lago. Back to you.
Yes, he is. Madeline Rivera, who has a great deal of experience covering protests like that. Be safe, of course. Thank you so much for your time today.
Hi, Winner Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to...
Good morning. The Prime Minister admits the old world order is gone.
Sir Keir vows to shelter British businesses from Donald Trump's tariffs.
But does Labour have what it takes to herald in a new era of protectionism?
Employer national insurance rises to 15%. High street bosses warn that it could stunt investment and hit jobs.
Labour MP Dan Norris is arrested on suspicion of rape and child sex offences.
The largest anti-Trump protests since the inauguration sweep across every single US state.
The Royal British Legion is building a new factory for our brave veterans.
LI is now hoping to raise £13.5 million so they can build a new factory on this site to hire more veterans and build more of these iconic Tommy signs. Fabulous, isn't it? We've got a very special treat lined up for you. Angela's Strictly partner, Kai Widdrington, is going to be joining us here on Breakfast.
And we might even get Stephen to dance.
Heaven forbid. Now, tearful Willie Mullins said he'd reached the peak of his record-breaking career as a trainer after his son Patrick romped home to win the Grand National on 33-1 shot. Nick Rocket. Away from entry, Max Verstappen has won the Japanese Grand Prix. We'll look ahead to the Manchester Derby.
Good morning. Plenty of sunshine to come across the whole of the UK again today. Find out all the weather details coming up soon.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Angela Rippon, and this is GB News Breakfast.
This is Asia Now.
It's 3 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 12:30 in New Delhi, and 2 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Angela Lim. And this hour, tens of thousands take to the streets across the U.S. protesting President Donald Trump and his sweeping policies in the biggest nationwide backlash since his return to power. Israel admits mistakes in a deadly strike that killed 15 humanitarian workers in Gaza, but says some had ties to Hamas. Footage from a victim's phone appears to contradict the IDF's claims about missing emergency signals. And the United Nations calls for more aid to support quake-hit Myanmar as the death toll rises to more than 3,300. The organization's humanitarian chief says they are trying to save as many lives as they can in what he described as a compound crisis.
This an earthquake on top of a long-running conflict, on top of existing very high levels of need. 20 million people in the country, that's 1 in 3, already needed our support.
Thousands have gathered across the U.S. to praise of President Donald Trump, dubbed the last single day since Trump returned to the White House. Around 1,200 took the twin expected out on more. Many Americans are angered by Mr. Trump's recent spending cuts and aggressive moves to downsize the government. Those have led to Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency cutting more than 200,000 federal jobs. Democratic lawmakers and activists spoke against President Trump's executive actions, even calling for his impeachment.
You are now sowing the seed and lead the courage to not only have articles of impeachment filed, but to impeach him a third time.
Nick, billionaire is not.
Britain's 20 my name's Peter. Your presses march against Trump over the US and aboard the option trying to put after tariff quake. France's foreign minister is in Algeria to patch up frayed relations. At stake, extensive trade and joint work on security. And explosions in the Ukrainian capital mark the return of Russian missiles as the city of Kryvyi Rih picks up the pieces of a deadly strike on Friday. First up, thousands of Americans rallied against Donald Trump and his advisor Elon Musk on Saturday. So-called hands-off demonstrations were organized in all 50 states as the opposition tries to regain momentum. Demonstrators want to protect their freedoms and government services as the administration pursues the most dramatic reforms and cuts in the US in decades. Trump seemed unaffected and enjoyed a round of golf. More from Vedika Bell.
From marching through Atlanta to rallying in downtown Chicago and protesting in front of Minnesota's Capitol, took down Trump and Musk over 1,200 locations across all 50 states.
subsidies for household batteries in a pre-election pitch. As the coalition vows to slash the number of international students to tackle housing affordability. Calls for an independent inquiry after Israel admitted its soldiers made mistakes over the killings of medic workers in Gaza last month. And former Premier of Tasmania, Tony Rundle, has died aged 86. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Selena Edmonds. Homeowners will be offered 30% off their home batteries if Labor's return to power at the federal election in a new cost of living pitch to voters. The Prime Minister has made the $2.3 billion pledge at a campaign rally in Brisbane. Political reporter Stephanie Dalzell was there.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is in Brisbane rallying the party faithful while presenting what the future would look like if Labor wins the looming election. The through line of his speech was now is not the time for uncertainty, it's a time for building, not wrecking. And that's the message.
Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Selena Edmonds. Homeowners will be offered 30% off their home batteries if Labor's return to power at federal election in a new cost of living pitch voters. The Prime Minister has made the $2.3 billion at a rally in Brisbane. Political reporter Stephanie Dalzell was there.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is in Brisbane rallying while Labor wins the looming election. The through line of his speech was now is not the time for uncertainty, it's a time for building, not wrecking. And that's the message we've been hearing from the Prime Minister so far this campaign. There was, of course, also a big focus on Queensland. The Sunshine State is largely enemy territory for federal Labor. It holds just 5 of 30 seats here. It's seeking
a country in protest against President Trump's moves against workers, immigrants, and U.S. trading partners. Then, as the market for chewable vitamins grows, are they as effective as traditional vitamin pills? And how weather reports from centuries-old whaling ship logbooks are providing scientists new clues about climate change.
We wanted to know if we could extract that weather data to inform climate science, and it turns out that you can.
Africa News. The news. The ongoing conflict between local armed groups and M23 rebels continue to result in loss of life, injuries and displacement among local population. Intense clashes between local armed groups and M23 rebels were reported on Thursday in the town of Masisi Center in North Kivu. Meanwhile, the southern province of Tanganyika is grappling with a rapidly escalating cholera outbreak that poses a serious threat to thousands. As of Wednesday, 9 out of 11 health zones in the province have been affected with over 1,450 confirmed cases and 27 deaths reported since January, a shocking 6-fold increase compared to the same period last year. United States Health emphasized the need for access to safe drinking water, noting that less than 20% of the affected areas have adequate coverage, coupled with insufficient healthcare resources to effectively address the growing number of cases. If you ever owned a pair of jeans from iconic American brands like Levi's or Wrangler, chances are they were made in Lesotho. The textile industry in Lesotho employs approximately 12,000 individuals and exports around 75% of its products to the United States. However, this situation may change following the 50% tariff imposed by US President Donald Trump on imports from Lesotho. I am anticipating that a lot of factories are at risk of closing down or will close down. If that happens, some of the men and women who work in those factories will be out of work. My business is sustained by those men and women, so I feel that my business is in danger. Trump claims Lesotho has a 99% tariff on American goods, which Lesotho government disputes. Locals worry about job losses and rising export costs. So many of our children and family have been stuck at home and unemployed as it is. So this means this will add to the problem that already exists. We need our government to step in and do something. In reaction to the new tariffs, Lesotho's Trade Minister Mokheti Shelile announced that the country will seek new markets and leverage the African Continental Free Trade Area to boost exports to more favorable destinations within Africa. We will have to diversify and go to other markets. We have Africa CFTA as a market, South Africa also as a market under the SACO regime. According to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, bilateral trade between the U.S. and Lesotho reached $240.1 million in 2024. In addition to clothing, Lesotho also exports diamond and various other products.
Egypt has received a $1.2 billion disbursement from the International Monetary Fund as the fourth tranche of its Extended Fund Facility EFF program. This disbursement is part of an $8 billion 46-month EFF arrangement initiated in March 2024, which expanded the original $3 billion program approved in late 2022. The IMF's Executive Board completed the fourth review of Egypt's economic reform program. The board approved Egypt's request for an arrangement under the Resilience and Sustainability Facility (RSF), granting access to about $1.3 billion aimed at supporting long-term economic resilience and sustainability initiatives.
Tonight, several developing stories as we come on the air. Protests all across the country as new tariffs take effect. Relentless, life-threatening storms in several states for a fourth day, and the search for suspects after a wild police chase and fiery crash. First, the large protests in multiple cities. From D.C. to California to Texas, tens of thousands of people challenging a variety of policies from the Trump administration and Elon Musk. All of this as the U.S. imposes new tariffs, growing concerns that prices will spike as Wall Street sinks. President Trump urging Americans to hang tough, and the new bipartisan move in the Senate to give Congress more control over tariffs. Team coverage tonight. A flash flood emergency from the South to the Midwest. Dangerous weather threats across a dozen states. More than 50 million Americans on alert. In Arkansas, 3 months of rain in just 4 days. Floodwaters reaching to the rooftops. In Kentucky, a home scene floating down a swollen river. Reports of numerous water rescues. More than a dozen tornadoes in just the past 24 hours. Our weather team tracking it all. Dramatic dash cam video. Police say they witnessed a carjacking in progress involving multiple cars. Then the wild chase that ended in a fiery crash. Tonight, the search for several suspects. Israel's military promises a thorough examination after newly released video emerges appearing to show Palestinian first responders and aid workers coming under attack by Israeli soldiers in Gaza. TikTok's future is still up in the air. China stalling a deal to sell the platform to U.S. interests because of President Trump's new tariffs. Shoppers are playing beat the clock, racing to stock up on furniture, appliances, even wine before the next tariffs take effect. Call it $5 and a dream. What's behind the big jump in the price of a Mega Millions ticket? And America Strong tonight, the heartfelt reunion between the inmates and the four-legged friends who changed their lives.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York.
Thank you very much for giving time to Amir Shackle 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Have a good life. Bye-bye.